Well, wow, we definitely have a full circle here this morning. So, welcome. Always happy to see everyone who I've seen before, as well as everyone who I haven't seen. Um, Writing poetry this morning must be the antidote to the debate last night. Um, Everyone showed up this morning. So, my name is Red Wing Kesar. We have been doing these groups since April. On Fridays, we kind of do a general poetry session. On Tuesdays, we do a group that's focused on grief and loss. People are welcome to come in and out, to come to some sessions, come whenever it's convenient. This has become quite an amazing community of people sharing writing, many of whom started out saying, I've never written anything in my life. So we really try to visualize that we were in a room sitting together around a great, beautiful table with flowers and great light. And we start by just going around and saying our names, where we are sitting in the world, and a word or an image that might describe just how you're feeling this morning in this moment today. Um, Thank you, everyone. We have a big circle today. I think my word for this morning is gratitude. So, for people who have not joined before, just to know what we do is I read a poem, we respond to it really just from our hearts. What what resonates with you? What word or image strikes you, surprises you, makes you curious? We're not here to analyze poems, we're just here to feel them. And then we typically do 3 or 5 minute writings based on prompts, which always surprise us and are amazing. And then we read to each other and again respond from our hearts. So I'm going to start this morning with a poem by Tony Hoagland called The Word. Down near the bottom of the crossed out list of things you have to do today, between green thread and broccoli, you find that you have penciled sunlight. Resting on the page, the word is beautiful. It touches you as if you had a friend and sunlight were a present he had sent from someplace distant as this morning to cheer you up and to remind you that among your duties, pleasure is a thing that also needs accomplishing. Do you remember that time and light are kinds of love? And love is no less practical than a coffee grinder or a safe spare tire. Tomorrow, you may be utterly without a clue, but today you get a telegram from the heart in exile, proclaiming that the kingdom still exists, the king and queen alive, still speaking to their children, to anyone among them who can find the time to sit out in the sun and listen. Down near the bottom of the crossed out list of things you have to do today, between green thread and broccoli, you find that you have penciled sunlight. Resting on the page, the word is beautiful. It touches you as if you had a friend and sunlight were a present he had sent from someplace distant as this morning to cheer you up and to remind you that among your duties, pleasure is a thing that also needs accomplishing. Do you remember that time and light are kinds of love, and love is no less practical than a coffee grinder or a spare tire? Tomorrow, you may be utterly without a clue, but today you get a telegram from the heart in exile, proclaiming that the kingdom still exists, the king and queen alive, still speaking to their children, to anyone among them who can find the time to sit out in the sun and listen. What words jump out at you? And just feel free to unmute yourself to speak.
Time and light are kinds of love.
The kingdom in exile.
Sit out in the sun and listen.
It touches you as you had a friend.
Still speaking to their children.
Between green thread and broccoli, you find you have penciled sunlight.
Pleasure is a thing that also needs accomplishing.
The kingdom still exists.
Love is no less practical. Go ahead, Red Wing.
Go ahead, Coco.
Love is no less practical than a coffee grinder or a spare tire.
Yeah.
Sit in the sun and listen.
Yeah. So, as always, if there's a line or a phrase or a word that jumps out at you that you want to start from and use as your prompt, go ahead. Otherwise, you can use "Do you remember?" Or there are kinds of love, or love is no less practical than. Lots of choices of prompts here. Feel free to use your own prompt, and we will do a 5-minute write. Do you remember? Kinds of love. Who would like to read? So I'm going to read this poem by Sono, also known as Mona Santacroce. And if you saw the poems that I had sent out, I love the story behind this poem. This was a homeless woman who was living at Zen Hospice residential house before she died. This was probably in the early 90s. And this was a story told by Frank Ostaseski, who was the director at that time, that he was reading a book of Japanese death poems, and the woman saw him and said, "What's that?" And he told her that Japanese monks, in their tradition, on the day of their death, they write a poem that basically expresses whatever their truth was that they had discovered in their lives. And so she said, "Oh, I want to do that." And this is the poem that she wrote. It's called "Don't Just Stand There." Don't just stand there with your hair turning gray. Soon enough, the seas will sink your little island. So, While there is still the illusion of time, set out for another shore. No sense packing a bag. You won't be able to lift it into your boat. Give away all your collections. Take only new seeds and an old stick. Send out some prayers on the wind before you sail. Don't be afraid. Someone knows you're coming. An extra fish has been salted. Don't just stand there with your hair turning gray. Soon enough, the seas will sink your little island. So while there's still the illusion of time, set out for another shore. No sense packing a bag. You won't be able to lift it into your boat. Give away all your collections. Take only new seeds and an old stick. Send out some prayers on the wind before you sail. Don't be afraid. Someone knows you're coming. An extra fish has been salted.
Someone knows you're coming.
Don't be afraid.
Take only new seeds and an old stick.
Soon enough, the seas will sink your little island.
Send out some prayers on the wind before you sail.
No sense packing a bag.
Don't just stand there.
Yeah.
An extra fish has been salted.
Give away all your collections.
Don't be afraid.
While there is still the illusion of time.
So I'm going to suggest as our prompt that we either use while there is still the illusion of time or don't be afraid. And as always, any other line or word that you would prefer to start with, go ahead. And we'll do a 4-minute write this time.
Thank you.
So it is the hour always goes by quickly. Thank you all. Hopefully those of you who did not get to read today will read next time. Certainly I hope those of you who are not regulars will come back and become regulars. Always a reminder that if you have a poem that came through you today that you are willing to send to us, please do. We did put together a book of poems that people wrote in the spring and summer sessions, and our intention is to do that seasonally, to have some kind of compilation of the poetry that comes out of this. And also just to let people know, and we will send out a reminder, but we do have a Reimagine End of Life, which is a huge organization across the country now. It used to just be in San Francisco, but that really does events related to normalizing conversations about living and dying, basically, is kind of expanded. And we are going to be advertising these groups through the Reimagine project for the fall, which goes from now until the beginning of December. And on November 20th, I'm just double checking the date. Yes, Friday, November 20th, at this time from 11 to 12, instead of having this gathering, there will be a time for anyone who has written a poem during these sessions and would like to read it to a much broader audience across the country, to read their poem and have a minute to say where it came from and the experience of doing this. So start thinking about that. If you think about a poem that you'd love to read, and then send it to us so that we have a sense of how many people want to read. I think we actually decided it'll be about 90 minutes total, but not all of that will be reading. But so please let us know, because this will be an opportunity for everyone to let your other circles of friends know that you're going to be doing a public poetry reading on Zoom with Reimagine with people around the country. So it's yet another exciting thing to come out of these amazing, amazing sessions with you all. Thank you so much for being here, for showing up, for sharing the amazing words that come through you each time. Have a safe, healthy, inspired weekend, and see you again soon.